On today's podcast of Data for All, I think actually, Charlie, you just actually went through something that was a little bit, probably was still raw for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you don't mind me throwing you this curveball, but, you and I have had a lot of changes, and I don't think people have really heard from us lately.
Yeah. So a lot of separate conversations we're bringing into the beginning of this, I suppose. But yeah, I did go through something pretty drastic. Like the company I worked for was acquired, and I couldn't find a place in the new organization. And so after 15 years, as of March 1st, I'm going to be unemployed.
Yeah.
And the emotional thing was that I just told everybody that I've worked with, and some of those people I've known for every last second of that. And it's, to say it was emotionally charged would be an understatement, but I think that I appreciated the moment and took advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah. First of all, so to give people a little bit more context, we were expecting to record today at 1 o'clock, and Charlie found out he knew of what was going to happen today, just didn't know it was going to be at 2 o'clock today until about 24 hours ago. So he said, hey, I got to do this at 2. And so we obviously paused what we were going to do at that time. Charlie got on, and I'm going to speak in very generalities here, but Charlie got on and spoke to his team, and I had to get up because I was going to, I felt very emotional about it. The bond that you expressed in that goodbye was genuine and heartfelt, and obviously you have a great connection with a lot of people, and I admire that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, when you say you work at a company where everybody starts at the bottom and works their way up, you're inevitably going to come across people who challenge themselves in ways that challenge you.
Sure.
Because you can't have some like up and coming folks like make you look bad. So you got to work hard to make sure that they don't make you look bad, and that makes them work harder to try and catch up. And it creates a positive work environment where the goal is to get work done.
Yeah.
And then people say that work's like family, but it's not. It's right. You can treat it as close to family as you possibly can, but ultimately, if your family's not making enough money, they're going to fire a family member.
That's right.
I mean, maybe some people would, but on average, it's not going to happen. But that's the standard interaction at work. And so this, in this particular case, like, am I sad that they didn't have a spot for me? Yeah, because I do love the people that I work for, and I was getting fired up to meet new people. I mean, I met them, but to really get into the new work, because we were getting everything set up to go, and then at the point of go, it just wasn't in the cards. And I don't think that's necessarily bad, because the industry of itself is one that's repressed from a money making perspective.
Yeah.
And that's the big old story, around carriers and the channel and stuff like that. But
sure.
Ultimately, like, I want to go to greener pastures.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the things that we wanted to talk about too, because we've been dealing with change, and I've been dealing with this for almost a year, or actually a year now. From the start.
And the reason is, in case it wasn't obvious, your company was bought, and as the CEO of a company that gets bought, it is then the new leadership's decision on what to do with the old leadership.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a fit. And they made...
Well, they just weren't ready for another leader. Yeah. I think that was more the case. They didn't, like, we all thought the same and we all felt the same and stuff like that. But ultimately they had people that they needed to make sure were okay. And because they were not okay with bringing in somebody from the outside.
Yeah.
And that does happen. And rather than destroy the cohesion that they currently have, it just, it's not now.
Yeah.
And so they gave good reasons. Like, they want me to build up reputation with the people, even though they know what I can do, they being the C-suite, and
sure.
even though Nashville knows what we can do, and the folks that I work with. And, in some cases that may have worked. But for now, that's not what I'm looking for, because I want to have control over where I'm going and what I'm doing. And I can't do that when people in Michigan control what I do for, work and whatnot. And so and we'll get into this a little bit more, but I'm excited, terrified, all of the things at once about what's happening. But I was telling you before, like, I feel like if the term turning a page to a new chapter is real, then today I put my fingers on the page and started folding that paper back. And then by the end of next week, I'll have completed that turn.
Yeah. And, I actually said it wasn't turning a page, it was closing a book and starting a brand new one.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Because I also had kids leaving the house and moving into a new house, moving into a new neighborhood. Everything was happening. And so it was turning into a completely new book. And maybe that's, it's not a new chapter. Why can't it be volume 2, right?
I mean, that's a fair way to look at it. Like, I have not dealt with, I've had a job for 15 years, and so that's been steady.
Sure.
I've grown through that job, so I haven't done the whole thing the whole time, or the same thing the whole time. But for the past 7 years, I've been a CEO of a company here in Nashville, and it's been, ups and downs. My great pleasure watching those around me succeed. I led through the pandemic, which is a whole nother thing. And so I picked up a lot of experience that people in my position would not have, and I don't begrudge it. But my change is just like my job. You've changed jobs, cities, responsibilities, like empty nested. I can't even your life right now compared to like even 2-3 years ago, about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Is night and day.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling these days?
Yeah. I'm not ready to go to me yet. Let's stick with you for a second.
All right. Fair enough.
Because I've got questions.
Okay.
Go back 15 years ago. You started there. That whole industry was new for you at that point?
It was, the business side of it was net new, but I'd sold cell phones.
Okay. And how quickly did it go from, I'm going to say entry level, or at least, initially, to any type of leadership?
Leadership?
Or management, leadership, whatever.
Well, I started acquiring extra responsibilities almost immediately.
Okay. And at that point, how big was the company?
I was the 8th employee.
Okay.
And so in small businesses like that, like if you're willing to do something, and
they'll give it to you.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
If they're going to grow, they'll give it to you, because one person can't do everything.
Were they things that you were equipped to do, or that
negative?
Okay. See,
I
love hearing that.
So I had to learn a lot, and I think I've talked about it before when we were talking about the organization stuff. Like, I got to a point. It took about 9 months from when I started to where I was just completely underwater. Because I kept on saying, gimme,
Sure.
without a thought of like how I was actually going to get it done. And so I could only work from the office at that point effectively. And so I had to do it all in 8 hours while taking phone calls.
Yeah.
And at the time I was given the room to fail, meaning I didn't get fired or anything like that, but I was also told that I had to get better. And so that's the thing that I've experienced myself. And then I've watched other people experience it, and I know it's not easy. And so that's one of the things that I told them today. It was just like, it has been my absolute pleasure to watch them grow, because it helps me grow. And so I'm only as good as they can be, if that makes sense, because they've got to fill in for the things that I'm reaching for. So if I want to pick up something new, somebody else has to pick up what I can't do because of that. And so as you work your way up, it's constantly like, give me stuff and I'm going to offload stuff. And where people get jammed up is when they don't know how to offload properly, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's been something that it's like an identity almost. It's like, this is what we do. Yeah. We grow people and stuff like that. And so letting go of that was really hard, but I started reaching for responsibility really quick and didn't stop.
Okay.
I never said no. And that's my mentality. I don't think everybody has to be like that. But if you're going to grow, you say yes to opportunities, whether they're in your wheelhouse or not.
And you chose then as a leader to build people.
Yeah. I didn't see another way. It's like you come up in a certain environment, like you specifically came up in a different type of work environment than I did.
Yeah.
And even when I was younger, like the different type of retail jobs, I got to experience a lot. Like I got to experience very, very micromanaging type managers, and I got to experience people who didn't care enough, and I got to experience all the goods and bads, but it was in these little, like microcosm type jobs.
Yeah.
It's like you work in a department, you never see any kind of big picture or anything like that. And when you get into a position to where you are the leader and you are deciding where the company goes, you've got to decide how you're going to get there. And just when I started looking at it in the beginning, that's all I saw is like, I've got to get these people built up because I read a book called 5-Star Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll look it up and put it in the notes. But the concept of 5-star leadership is like, are you an effective leader is based off of how well things work when you're not around. Effective 5-star leaders could disappear and it wouldn't impede the progress of the business. And so what I like to think is that me leaving G Squared is not going to impact the day-to-day because AMI didn't need the leadership piece and they didn't need the network. They needed people who would get the job done and would standardize the job and train people and do all the stuff that G Squared does well. That's not just help desk for mobile devices and whatnot. And so I kind of rambled there for a bit.
That's okay. And again, it's still raw. And,
yeah.
And I don't care if this isn't the most perfect podcast. I probably won't sound as happy as I normally do because I'm trying to figure out how to say what I want about me because I've gone through a lot, but at the same time, I it's the high road idea. So it's easier to just talk about you. And again, I don't want to stop on that yet. What I do, in seeing what you have done, I want to get to like our future stuff after we go through things.
Sure.
I think it's important to talk about why it's so hard to go, because it's a safe place. You've been doing something within your silo, and I'll call it silo as in your company, right? Yeah. And you think what you do is good. Now you got to see if it can happen outside that. And I'm saying it this way because I think that's how I feel too.
Yeah. So we've been tested, I wouldn't say in a vacuum, but in a certain situation. And to clarify a little bit, it's like we have positions, we have statuses and stuff like that, but we've also both been in those positions with those statuses for a while.
Yeah.
And so we worked up to it. And so now can you repeat? Can we repeat? Can we be successful in anything?
Yeah.
And that's a big question that every single person who wants to try and do something has to answer.
Yeah.
Or has to, like, maybe the answer comes after you put in the effort. And so, like, for me, if I just blindly throw the effort at something, I'm way better than if I try to calculate every move. Like, I'll make a mess in the beginning, but it's just the getting started thing that works for me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I can do whatever I want. And then the thing that, after having the emotional piece just a little bit ago, and I intentionally wanted to talk about this after because in the context of turning the page, I want to make a declaration that I'm going to give whatever I do 100%. And so there are multiple options at this point. Do I do something myself? And if I do something myself, where does what is it? What's the product going to be? Do I do something that's more charity based because we've got that option?
Sure.
And all of that stuff is like available, but then also what's available is like, I could just go get a job.
Yeah.
I could just go be told what to do day in, day out. And maybe that would be good for me, for a bit. But I think long term, I've just learned how to look up and out. And I can't take that away. It hurts to not have the visibility. It's like once you drive a car, you kind of pay attention to the road. And now that I know the road's there and I see things in the road, I want to swerve. And when leadership that exists doesn't line up with that, it bothers me. And so I don't want to be in a situation where I'm not connected to that. And so if I did get a job, it would have to be from that top level perspective. But I'm also kind of hungry to build something as well, because I enjoyed that the most. Or that was what I enjoyed the most at G Squared, was the ability to build something. Oh, we need something to take care of a problem. I got you.
Yeah. And it's okay if you bounce a little bit to get those extra skills that you or confidence, like go do a contract with somebody and things like that. And then while you're doing that, so, the one thing you can't do is just sit on your hands forever. Right.
Sure.
And so that's, at some point you got to just go do something. And, whether that is work for somebody else, which is not terrible. I don't know. Actually,
it's not. Yeah, you hear a lot of people talking about like, oh, I can't imagine what it's like to go sit in a cubicle for 8 hours a day and stuff like that. I'm here to tell you, some people love that. Yeah. Some people, that's all they want to do, is they want to exchange their time for a predefined amount of work that happens a certain way, and they're good. Yeah,
and it lets them do their stuff externally that they want to do, and I almost envy that now, because I got so far away from doing fun stuff because I was working all the time.
I'm kind of envious of that, but like I said earlier, I can't put my head down anymore, and I'm wondering, like from that position, I'm wondering, well, like I wonder who these, who are they networking with? Who are they getting to know? Are they up on the latest technologies? And that was one of the things that I was worried about at in this previous situation, is like, what are they looking at? Because I didn't get the opportunity to see behind the veil, because they were making decisions and they played stuff close to the chest, which is not a big deal. And I didn't have an expectation that they'd come to me and like say, is this plan fine by you, and stuff like that. But I made my mind up pretty early on that it was leadership or nothing for me. Gotcha. And so whether they didn't get that made the choice easier. Yeah. And I got the initial news, and then I had to have a follow-up conversation to advocate for myself and make sure that everything was heard that I wanted to be said. But there's realistically things that I planned on doing for them that I can just do for anybody. Because I don't know if you heard it or not.
AI is a thing.
And AI, all the things, is a thing. And I think that's the way we should go in business.
Yeah. And so, all right, should we hit me up now?
Yeah.
No.
All right, so why don't you let me help pull it out of you rather than have you just talk, right? Because it is pretty heavy. So paint the picture of what you were doing 5 years ago. Where were you?
Yeah, so 5 years ago would have been 2019, 2018. I was the director of the Data Science Institute at Middle Tennessee State University and a professor. I would have been in year 1 or 2 of starting that, after being the chair of my department for that. So I've been in academic administrative roles since, let's say, 2011.
Over a decade?
Oh, well over a decade. Yeah, for sure.
So that's where you worked, but you lived in Murfreesboro at the time?
Yeah, Murfreesboro, and for those out there, is about 30 miles south-ish of Nashville.
Yeah, so about an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half on 24. Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes. No, a lot of times.
Yeah, you would know.
Yeah.
A lot of people do make that commute, though. Like the one remote employee that we have right now, he comes up from Murfreesboro every day. But he comes up at like early in the morning to beat the traffic, and then he leaves town at like 2, so he's good most of the time.
Yeah, well, Murfreesboro for schools is amazing. Cheaper homes. And we raised 4 kids.
And so in 2019, how many of them children were still living with you?
2019, well, for COVID, they all came back.
You had all your kids living with you?
So I had 2 boys in high school.
And then 2 kids in college.
And I had 2 kids in college. So if you look at where we were with COVID, we were in a house in downtown Murfreesboro, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1905.
So a solid house.
Yeah. And we had 4 kids, 4 dogs, and Trisha and I in that house during COVID.
So chaos. pure.
It was the best time I ever had because I had my kids every day.
It doesn't feel like that's you because you live in the chaos. Like you let it flow around you. But if anybody stepped into that from the outside, they would be pushing against and it would be. Sure. I'm sure it would be like, why is there so many people moving all the time?
Yeah,
and the dogs and all that kind of stuff. And so you had a we'll call it a fast-paced life.
Yeah, well, in 2019 before, obviously I was very much treated every kid like they were my only child, and so we were at everything. Yeah,
you mentioned that you didn't like missing any of your kids' stuff if at all possible.
Never did. Ever. Never missed for unless I was teaching a class that night. Of course, I didn't miss that, and I usually taught one night a week back then. And
it was a priority though.
It wasn't a priority; it was a necessity.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. The only way I would miss is if another kid was playing, and we try to do both.
So one's at one, and
we did a lot of the swapping stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like we'll have to do some of that. And so you're in 2019. You're spending a lot of time and effort on family, which is the way it should be. But also, you advanced your career. You went from a professorship. Is that what you call that? Professorship?
Just faculty.
You went from being faculty to administrative staff, and then from an administrative staff to the chair of your department to then the
Data Science Institute, which is still going strong.
Yeah.
And at that time,
that's Amy's thing now, right?
No.
Who's over that?
Keith Gamble is.
Okay, I don't think I met him.
Yeah, he was the chair of economics and finance at the time, and so not really a data scientist, but just a great guy, really, really good guy.
Nice.
And wasn't really involved when I was there. I had others that were, but what happened then is data science was the thing. I was doing a lot of stuff. I was very active in Nashville.
Yeah.
So I was kind of this, golden boy at the university.
You were everywhere, man.
I was definitely everywhere, man. And
while being family man.
And
sleeping sometime, right?
And I did a lot of nonprofit work. And
that's where we crossed.
Yeah. And especially on the education side, I was still a race director and all that stuff.
Yeah. I didn't you have so much going on. I forgot that every year you put on a big race that
I would do 3 or 4 a year that I was in charge of. Yeah. And that's like 3,000 people. I was talking with police. I would do everything for some of those races. Sometimes I would just be the course director, like the middle half. That's what I did.
See, now so much stuff is clicking in because ever since I've met you, I'm like, does he ever stop? But then, hearing about what life was like before I met you, I was like, oh, well, he's just conditioned.
I'm just used to that. Yeah. And, a little of that is the small business mentality, and stuff. But, when I was getting a PhD, I was also working for 40 hours a week, had 2 kids
taking
at
care
home.
of 8 kids at that point.
And so that was normal. And so I will say this about MTSU. I loved being there. I fit. I fit with this public university.
With the culture?
The culture, yeah. The students were first gen, local. I had no money. If I needed a budget, I had to go get it. And actually, before I left there, I was able to get a allocation of $2.6 million for the Data Science Institute. And then I left.
All right.
But in doing that, I always thought, got to stop thinking about college only. It's got data, and data science has to be at the university level.
Please explain, because you just said 2 words that mean the same to me. You said college and university.
Okay. College is like the College of Business.
So it's the individual subject matter schools.
Yeah. So so you have university.
Yeah.
Then you have colleges, and then within the colleges are departments.
Okay, no, I'm never mind. I'm dumb because I forgot so I was like, psychology is not a
college. It's a department.
It's a department of human sciences.
Yeah, and that one at MTSU would have been in the College of Basic and Applied Sciences. I think that's where psychology was. So, and then my department was Information Systems and Analytics in the College of Business.
Okay.
And I wanted data science to be at the university level. I wanted, and everybody was on board until you actually had to figure that stuff out. So whatever it is, that never bothered me.
That's a whole different subject.
Yeah,
though.
I just love to work.
Yeah.
And other people are like, "Whoa, slow down. We don't need to go that fast." And I'm like, "Yes, we do. Yes, we do, because I know this data thing is real, and we've got to do things." And so I built an undergrad program with others, of course, not by myself.
When you say you mean it's a
good group of people. Yeah. We did a graduate certificate. 4 of us built it from the ground up. We built a master's degree, and then within one of our PhDs, we built a track within that. So we did all of that within like a 2-year period before I left there. I was very, very proud of it. I loved being there, and I have to admit, when I left MTSU to go to Belmont, because I realized at MTSU it was going to be really hard to do the university-wide thing, and I had to go back to just my college.
Okay.
And I was going to do that. I was. And I would have stayed there for another 20 years. And then Belmont starts asking me how to build this at their university, and I'm like, don't do it. It's hard. This is really hard. You need somebody that's willing to be a champion, to go out and do, all this stuff. And I think the more I said don't, the more they wanted me. And which, makes sense. We all know that kind of.
Well, I mean, for those who don't know, like usually if somebody's telling you that something is not good, they know exactly why and how to make it better. And
so I really wanted to do community level projects in Nashville, and I wanted to build curriculum at the university level.
Yeah.
And then it was a brand new president coming in. He was all for that, was willing to spend money on it, get staff, all of that. I was like, oh, that's great. And so I switched over to Belmont. First time in my life.
Yeah.
I switched jobs. Because and I say that
without changing industries and what you do specifically, or what do you mean?
I went from the family business where me going and getting a job as a professor was like the pinnacle day of my life. I got you. And so it wasn't like I left.
You did tell me he was proud about that.
He was very proud. Still is. And so I didn't feel like I was leaving. I was almost graduating.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this is the first time I was leaving, and people were mad.
Oh, I bet.
And when I say mad, in my head, they were mad.
Yeah, I mean, some people really do get mad. They feel abandonment and stuff like that. I mean, emotions are emotions.
Yeah, and I probably didn't do it perfectly. It was quick.
I mean, that makes sense that they would get mad.
And I went to my bosses, which would be deans and provost level, and said, "Hey, I'm going to give them 6 months." And they said, "You know what? Why don't you go now?" And it wasn't like it really wasn't that much animosity, but it was like, it was in July, and I was getting ready to start a bunch of new things. I just finished a bunch of stuff. It's like, you can't come in and just start a bunch of new things and then leave.
It's true.
So why don't you go now? And I'm like, okay. Well, everybody else just took that as, boy, Charlie just took off in a week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way at all. Well, I'm not going to go back and, so you just move on, right? And the guilt was forever.
Really?
Yeah. And I still have it. I loved those people. I loved MTSU.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like it's a good group of people and stuff, but still, like, there should be no animosity in doing better for yourself.
I know.
Like they
and I think that's the way people felt, but I didn't.
Oh, because I got you.
And so it was guilt. I've been the most, I've always said, be loyal, be loyal, be loyal. And I think you feel that way too, right?
I do, but that's where, like, what is loyalty to an employer comes into play.
Yeah. And academia is a little different, right? Because you go to a job to retire. That's why you get tenure, right?
Yeah, sure. Oh, you mean in academia?
Academia. Sure. That's the norm. And nobody left MTSU. It was like, you're leaving as a professor? And so anyways, went to
Were
Belmont.
You tenured at that point?
Oh, yeah. Tenured and full professor. Yeah. I was there.
So you took a big risk.
Yeah, sure. But I was also ready for a move. Like, when I need to grow. I need to continue to grow, and I was not going to grow anymore.
Well, if you feel like MTSU, like, if you explain to them why something needs to happen at the university level, and then you see people actively working against you or not accepting it as a reality, like, that hurts. Especially because I feel the same way. Like, I feel the need to grow and to do things and to move. And if I'm not doing that, I feel stagnant, and I feel like I'm a big old piece of crap for not getting stuff done and
Yeah.
all this other type of stuff. And that's all I've been doing for like the past year is just sitting and waiting and all this other type of stuff. So I can definitely feel you. And so changing a job in that situation, it was beneficial to you in more than just you get to do stuff. Like it was an all around, on paper, good move because it puts you in a way better position than would otherwise because you're closer to town. Your network is nearer.
That was unbelievable how that was different.
But you get all those Belmont connections too, and they'll introduce you to folks and things like that.
My connections went through the roof, and I'm talking with mayors and governor, not the governor himself, but all of
you're working
folks.
with folks around the city.
Yeah, and then I just lucked into a couple of projects. I got a lot of publicity, and I had to work my tail off to make those happen,
as you are wont to do.
And so going to Belmont, I hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was just me for about a year, and then I brought on staff.
Okay.
But most of my time was spent external, and the university did not have a lot of people doing external stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, and I knew everybody, and whatever my network was, it quadrupled.
Well, I didn't know you pre-Belmont, and so you and Belmont hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like as I met you, I was just like, oh, he runs the data collaborative at the Belmonts.
Yeah, and trying to think, was I at Belmont? No, I wasn't at Belmont that year I was. I'm trying to think of when
we met in January of 2022.
Yeah,
officially.
Yeah, because I started August of 21, and so anyways, I was the executive director of the data collaborative. I was working hours that were just not fair, and I was so burned out. And I just wasn't a fit there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm private school stuff. Just with certain people. How's that?
Yeah. Well, I think as a leader of an external group on their side, like not being a fit feels extra.
It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life.
Really? That's a big statement. Seeing as how you've got like 4 kids, 18 dogs. And all that type of stuff.
How real are we going to be today?
I mean, you get as much as you can.
I don't know if I want.
It's up to you. Like that's so everybody.
I'm going to. You know why? Because if I tell my story correctly and I'm transparent, everything I want to do now is be authentic, is be my true self.
You have mentioned that before. So if you feel like saying something, you should, as long as it's not disparaging or detrimental to.
It's all about me at this point. And I'm not going to say anything bad about any people.
On air, at least we'll talk about it later.
But my son, in October of 2021, went through some really bad depression. He's very vocal about it, very public about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed our lives. So as I started a new job, as I'm doing this commute, trying to build something, my only concern was my son at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really tough, really, really tough. And as that happened, I had to do some introspective type of stuff, but I went into a depression that lasted for about 1.5 years.
What does that look like to you? Just throwing yourself into stuff?
What do I do?
How do you express depression?
You do, well, there's levels of it.
Well, I mean, how do you specifically in this case then?
When I got to a certain point, believe it or not, all the work I was doing, I literally couldn't, there were days I couldn't get out of bed. And then I literally would go work 15-hour days. And it was such a emotional toll to sometimes try to smile. And people took that as me being mean. Yeah.
So things happened. It changed. I bet that changed your perspective on the situation.
Yeah. And so burnout. And this is why I want to say this. First of all, you can't go through it alone. I was
burnout
in depression.
Yeah. For sure.
And what I did go to try to do that. It didn't work for me.
So you couldn't even say that.
I know. I don't want to say it.
Yeah.
It's not that it didn't work for me. I wouldn't let it work for me.
Yeah. It was, you've got to be willing to accept whatever truths you find in there. And if you're not, it's not going to work.
And everything bothered. my family, my everything. I took it out on, and
that's what the past few weeks has been like for me.
And so now you know why I'm hitting you up all the time. I've been through it. And so with all that being said, I was not out of it in November. It was actually probably the worst it was. And so I'm good at faking. So you're probably like, I didn't even realize you were doing it. No, it was, it was bad. I mean, I remember sometimes we would be doing podcasts and I'd be like, how do I act like my normal self? But for some reason I could, because maybe it was just, it's our incredible chemistry.
Well, I would challenge that a little bit, because I would say that our conversation over the past, or a couple weeks ago, about like us getting straight to business and losing that interpersonal connection, I think that's probably a reflection of that. In some ways.
I think we've talked about the fact that we feel like we haven't had the fun that we've normally had, and I think that probably was a slow trickle that got us there, right? It wasn't that we never had a blow up. We never did anything like that, but it was just like all of a sudden it was like, this is, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but
I think for my part, we broke habits. Like, we had habits of meeting in person at least every other week to cover what we were the content and stuff like that. And then when we did the analytics summit, that was like the first week of October. We did that. We changed studios. We changed all of our workflow, and we went to this like mostly remote talking every once in a while thing, because we both got busy, and we lost focus on this and like what it meant to be this. And so we just got into like, well, what are we going to do just to make sure that we talk for an hour or something like that? And that's not to say that the guests we haven't had on haven't been spectacular.
No, we've made up for it with good guests.
For sure. Because I like the next from the time of this recording, the next podcast coming out is with an expert in intellectual property and things, and I find it fascinating. Yeah. And then our conversation with Alex on advocacy, I found that that's fascinating.
Those are probably to me, that was our two most informational podcasts, interviews.
But it's like, exactly. But it's sit down and let's draw information out instead of having a circular conversation.
Yeah, we always said we wanted guests to be contributors, not interviewees.
And I'll be damned if we didn't turn them into interviews.
We did. And now, with Alex, I wanted his story out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because he's so amazing. And but Franklin, who I think he'll be the week before this. It was just too much good information. We never got to. We need to bring him back. So
I mean that's where it wound up, because we could break it down. He's so knowledgeable that we could talk about one little sliver of how content and the law and getting paid works, and we could talk for an hour and a half easy. And so we try to take all of it into one episode in just like let me just shove this down as much as possible. And he can do that because he's on point with everything. But I feel like if we would have taken the time to step back, like I would have liked to get to know him a little bit better, because he will, and we'll do this next time we have him on too, because he feels like somebody that it's good to know and it's good to have a conversation with, just to see how things are changing.
So he was so good, Well, I think, I'd love to do it we'll talk about it, but we're not grabbing for headlines or for clicks. And so we're going to bring people on that are going to help us continue this discussion.
Yeah. I mean, we do want clicks and comments.
Yeah.
But that's
we're making all this stuff up, actually. We're just wanting you to feel sorry for us. But no, this is good therapy.
Feel sorry for us. And then click on the videos.
Feel sorry for him, not me.
But we were talking about you, and you successfully diverted.
I know. I'll let it finish, and I'm gonna do it real quick, because we're already at 45 minutes, and this might go for 3 hours, and it is what it is. Anyways, in November of last year, I was burned out, and but at the same time, I knew there needed to be some changes, because Belmont had made major changes, because a new president comes in, and now person after person being hired, from really good schools, and I'm just little MTSU guys, the way I felt, right or wrong, indifferent. That's my perception. That's not theirs, right? So I want to be very clear. I'm not saying reality. I'm saying what my perception is. And in that, I went to people and said there needs to be changes, and unfortunately, I was the change.
I feel that. Yeah, I feel that a lot, actually.
Yeah. Regardless, I am now just back to faculty for the first time in, I said, about 12 or 13 years.
Well, to round that off, you're a faculty member, which means you just teach.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with just teaching, by the way.
That's what most do.
But that's what you use. You just teach.
That's right.
But you're also living in Nashville.
Yep.
Right down the street from our wonderful soccer stadium.
Yes.
And like within and
I live in a neighborhood where the average age is about 25.
Yeah.
And I'm not 25.
And you do well, apart from just the occasional visiting kid, you're empty nesting, or you do have.
No, my daughter lives with us.
That's right.
But she's finishing her doctorate degree at Belmont in occupational therapy, but we see her. She's got a boyfriend, and she's an adult. She's 24.
Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, a much settled down life, and you've only got 3 dogs.
Only 3 now
at this point.
Yes.
And so that's settled down as well.
And the day after this whole thing started shaking down, or 2 days after, that's when my dog got stolen.
Oh yeah, no, you were. So I knew at that point you were a mess.
Oh.
And when you called, so this is how ready to roll I was, because I knew it was impacting you so much. Like, this man loves dogs, I think, more than anything. Like, if you ever want to see true happiness on his face, it's with his squeezer.
Oh, squeezer.
In his face, licking him,
cute.
licking him and stuff like that. It's like, I don't like dogs licking me in the face, but I appreciate that you love your dogs so much. But you were in a bad way, and then your dog
got stolen
from your front. It got out for a little bit and then it was gone. I've never seen you in such a panic, but I was ride or die in that case, because when you told me that you were potentially going to go meet somebody, I geared up and I was ready to go.
Yeah, I know.
We were getting that dog back.
Yes.
And so luckily for you, and maybe both of us, they just brought it back, right?
They did. And because of social media, honestly, because my daughter got out there and created like 9 fake accounts. He called one of the fake accounts. And said, I think I know where your dog is. And because he called my wife's number. Yeah. And on my dog's collar is my number.
This is how we know it's stolen.
Yes.
The number was there the whole time.
Yeah. And we actually saw people. And they said, a guy grabbed it and they said, hey, is that your dog? I said, it's my brother's. And what happened is I left the door a little bit open. 2 of my dogs got out. One is very fast. One is an English bulldog.
Yeah.
Cutest thing in the world. Oh,
but highly desirable by everybody.
And she loves everybody too.
Yeah.
So somebody came up and she grabbed, and so one night, it's all we went through. I know people that have gone through a month of that. One night almost killed my wife.
You were definitely a mess.
Oh, so all of that happening at the exact same time, and so the end of 2023. I went 45 days without sleeping. It was just, when I say, I would every night end up having to go to the couch because I just couldn't get thoughts out of my head. Yeah. And
the worst kind of stress.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't know really what to do about that. And as every day that now goes by, what I'm noticing is a couple of things. Getting rid of burnout has changed my life. I'm smiling again.
Okay. But what do you mean getting rid of burnout?
So when you have burnout to the point of I work myself to death. Yeah. You're so unhappy. You can't do things. When people talk to you, so it's real. And with depression, if that's part of your life, which by the way, everybody has depression. It's just some people have more highs and lows.
Yeah, they're prone to it.
Yeah. And I am. I just know it. And that is what it is. Then the best part really wasn't even my family. First of all, my wife's been amazing.
Yeah, you that's worth saying. She stepped up in a big way.
If you ever want to help your marriage go through adversity, and if that other person is a rock and is there and supportive and will do anything for you, she's more mad about anything that's happened to me than me. You got a good one.
Yeah. Seeing that kind of reaction because you got hurt is is very comforting.
Yeah. And so that was amazing. So aside from that, my friends, this is what I think is really important. If you are above the age of 40, do not forget about friends.
It's easy sometimes.
And you and I have obviously become friends.
Don't tell.
We are good. I say we're good friends, and
your mom says we're friends, so we're friends.
That's right. And and then I would say we've got this little group, Zach Gemignani, which you all know, and Colin that we brought on. 4 of us talk every day.
Yeah, we got a polo group, or Marco Polo group, for those who don't know.
We do coffee on Fridays.
Yeah.
We obviously play ping pong together. We've got a big group that does that.
Yeah.
We had 10 people at our last one. I never had that in my life.
You mentioned that before.
Yeah, and I even mentioned to you earlier today why I'm so guarded. Because it took me 50 years to get where I feel like I have friends that are equal. And so I've always had people, but I've always been the person in charge.
Yeah. What do you mean by equal is they can understand what you're talking about and the things you're going through.
Yeah. And then here we are, 2 guys named Charlie going through very similar things now.
Yeah. It's serendipitous, to say the least, that we both wind up going through something like this at the same time, because we can help each other. Yeah. And so this is a good segue into I think we can skip, like we've talked a lot about the emotional stuff and how the changes impacting us, and we can get into like you talked about burnout, and there's a whole episode about pulling yourself out of burnout, both mechanically, mentally, like behaviorally, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And you hit on one of the major things is like sometimes to get out of burnout, you got to change your setting.
Oh, and and if you believe in faith and anything where there's karma, I guess I was never going to get out of burnout unless something hit me in the face.
Yeah.
And said you're going to stop, and it would have been either a illness or a situation, and I'm glad it was a situation. Definitely.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, it was the building.
Yeah, and now I'm sitting here saying, for the first time in over 12 years, I can actually do the things that I think I can do.
Yeah. Instant fear.
Yeah.
Because now you've got so many things to choose from. What are you going to do?
And you have the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think this is exciting to literally talk about that. And we've been doing this podcast as a hobby, and that's okay, right? Yeah. We can continue to do that. I'm not saying all of a sudden we're going to quit our jobs and become podcasters, but it is part of what we like to do.
Yeah.
And it inspires. And so one of the, I want to make sure I'm going where you want to go. I've talked too much.
Well, I think you're going the right direction.
Okay. So I think where you're at today, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So because of friends, they have been so supportive. Like you all say, Charlie, you're such a good, you do the speaking thing.
Yeah.
You need to pursue that. I'm like, I really do love that. I want to do consulting or advisory, or I want to create my own educational products to help the right people. No, I mean, I love teaching. And by the way, I'm teaching a class right now where I have students that are MBA students, an accelerated MBA class. It's the best experience I've ever had.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just, and I'm going to get you to meet them next week. And it's, I don't know why we've clicked, but I can be myself. And so this authentic Charlie is back. And I went a few years without laughing, being goofy. I really am just a goofy dude. And I happen to know data science.
Yeah.
And so now I have this incredible network, and I can start seeing if I can do what I've been preaching.
Yeah. I think that we both have, we mentioned it earlier, there's the apprehension of like, can I repeat success?
Sure.
But then intellectually, like that's easy to look at and say, yeah, I can, because I know, I'm actively looking at the landscape. I see, like, in the industry that I've worked in for so long, I see their needs.
Sure.
And if I wanted to build a product towards that, I could. And then I've got a network that exists that I could take that to. And then that's literally how you start businesses.
Yeah.
And so do we do that?
Yeah.
Do we do
I need to get
something
back
else?
to my advice.
Your
point.
advice. Sorry.
Advice, no matter what, is go through a process that allows you to truly know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a very good friend, Ernest Chapman,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just go ahead and mention him. He's got a marketing company, Not Black Labs is the name of his company. And he has this thing called brand therapy he does for businesses. And he goes, why don't I do that for you?
Mm-hmm.
And think of you, Charlie Apigian, as a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we went through this brand therapy stuff, and it is all about identity. Really getting to the core of who you are, what you want to be, what you want your future self to be, and your core behaviors to get there.
Yeah.
And you go through a process where you create a creative brief. You do a morning routine. You got to see it.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun to go through, but what I would have never gotten to where I am today with this, my new identity of where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to, I want to be authentic.
Yeah.
100% genuine.
How do you present your authentic self versus what you think people?
Yeah. And I think for me, it's going to be informally talking about complex topics.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what we do on this, right?
Yeah.
So this is
what
one
you're
of,
good at.
and I think most people, if you've been listening, you're getting the authentic me here, but I have had to be something else in other areas. And I probably didn't have to, but I was, and it was not comfortable.
I agree with that last sentiment. I think you put that on yourself.
Yeah.
Based off of what you thought others thought.
And that's true. And that was not feeling like I fit, probably.
Yeah. And so the advice is find a way to be true to my authentic self while accomplishing what it is I want to accomplish.
Yeah. And then for me, I need hooks. I need almost like a slogan.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I look at is I've said I want to inspire, educate, and advise.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Inspiring is this.
I saw you working on that earlier.
Yeah. And inspire is all about things that are public facing. It's speaking engagements. It's this. It's writing a blog. It might be doing a YouTube video. Any of that kind of stuff is my inspire stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Education is what I do, right?
Yeah.
I know how to do education, but does that also mean I can do education in other places? And and I'm already talking actually at the Nashville Technology Council, which we didn't mention. We're there. This is our
if you couldn't
home.
tell.
Yes, we've got it behind us here, as well as we finally found our.
I had it in my
we
closet.
finally brought ours here as well. But with the NTC, I've been talking about how can we take this idea of a data mindset and create a course out of it. And as we've talked to C-level people, they want their employees, their middle managers to go through that.
Well, I think that's where a lot of this stuff lies, is like we sit in a position to where we see what the workforce is going to need in the next 3 to 5 years,
Yes.
or actually technically in the next 12 to 24 months. Whereas, and not to go too far into it, like we see where things are going and what's needed, and workforce reskilling and education is paramount, because every single person that exists in the workforce right now is about to have to learn something, whether they like it or not. And this has started from us saying that, like, maybe you need to get your learning hat on and get ready to, like, if you're not already doing it, you're behind.
But before you can do that, you got to have the right mindset. And there's this way we have to just understand that AI is going to be in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Data is going to be part of every decision.
Yep.
We've got to stop thinking about it as a nice bonus. No, it is a necessity, and the right way to think of it, I feel I have that process. And the NTC has been really, really great about listening to what my thoughts on an educational program and what they're doing this year. And I'm going to give them the plug because I think this is great, is, we've built Nashville now. We've got this, when I say we've built it, we have a tech community that's pretty big.
Yeah.
And if it gets any bigger, we're in trouble because we don't know how many more employees we can bring to town. But we've grown very fast here.
Yeah. Nashville is a prime spot to be from a tech community perspective.
Absolutely. And the NTC grew as well during that time, even with COVID and things. Were probably about 600 members. And I remember the days when it was 300 and churn was, like 65% wouldn't, come back the next year kind of thing. And now retention is so much better, way, way better actually. But they want to focus on their members. And as part of that, offer education. And I'm like, yes. And here's what I'd love to do. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And so there's that part. Then the advice for me is all about, probably C-level. Like I get an opportunity to talk to CIOs, CDOs, CISOs, CEOs, all the C's, right? And when I talk to them, I feel like I can communicate with them in a way that they understand. And they need that. They need this other person. And I love doing that.
We were talking, so we've got a CEO buddy that we were talking to earlier today, and he's trying to wrap his head around why AI is important.
Right.
And he's somebody who needs to know like everything he wants to know. And I feel like that's been a good challenge to help him understand in a way that he feels complete and total comfort with the idea. And shout out to Colin for being the most inquisitive CEO that I've come across, because a lot of people in his position don't care about the details or the whys, and so they wind up losing a little bit of like control because they can't tell if they should be turning hard left or slightly left from a technology perspective.
Well, is it hype? Because they've gone through how many hype cycles?
But that's the point. It's like they may make a molehill out of a mountain.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But now, I feel like now it's more like the molehill out of a mountain thing, because there's a gross underestimation of how much AI is going to be impactful in the very, very near future. And but to your point, like you're advising people on just that. Like you're telling the Collins of the world who are curious, but maybe not, completing adding it to their complete picture. Because that's exactly what executives do, is they build a complete picture of what it is that they're doing, and they don't see how AI fits into it, or, data or technology or whatnot. And so you come in and you say, okay, so this part of the painting or your picture is now changed in this kind of way. And this is how, and, each executive is going to take their own personalized communication, because their experiences, you have to connect what exists to their experiences. And that's an individual approach right now in a lot of ways. Like maybe you could throw out big blankets and stuff like we do on here and it clicks. But if you're coming into focused efforts on the advise part, like you really need to dig deep with that person.
Yeah, and be the calm in a chaotic landscape.
Like, do you see me? I'm not worried. But things are about to change, but I'm not worried, because everybody's going to be dealing with this. And so I don't feel like that's one solace that I can take, is that I don't feel so alone, because even though I've left what I've been doing, like everybody is going to be in this kind of constant state of change.
But if you did not keep growing over the last couple of years, you branched out, right? And this podcast is a good branch out for you. I mean, you know data, you know how to operationalize it, but you chose to learn new things. Would you feel different today with what you went through if you didn't do all that growth?
I would have quit a long time ago. I wasn't getting, like professionally, I wasn't getting the stimulation, which is why I had to do this.
Okay.
Because I've been in a holding pattern.
You just said something that a lot of people, that happens, right? If your job is not fulfilling, you need to go external and do external things.
Well, so the number one thing that an employee needs to know, and this isn't just me, this is every single employee almost ever, is that what they do matters, and what they do goes towards something. And that's the money is like, it's a given in a relationship like this. But if you give somebody money and then just take their work and throw it into the garbage can, they're only going to be able to take so much of that. Well, unless the money's right. The money could be totally right, and that's fine. But in most cases, it's not.
It's not sustainable. It's not. And I
And so that's the way I felt for the past while, because once we decided that we were selling the company, then all innovation stopped. They shut down reviews, they shut down any new projects, and like everything. And so my main job over the past 12 months has been ensuring the continued employment of everybody that I work with.
Yeah.
And so we got to the other side of that, and I feel like mission accomplished, but also I didn't do anything for myself in that time. And so now it's time to do for me.
And do for you. Like I have done I'm not saying I've done for others, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've done for the project. I've done for the school. I've done for the students.
Yeah.
For sure. And I cringe at self-promotion, even though it probably looks like I do a bunch. And that goes back to me as a kid. I just, my dad was really good at self-promotion, but arrogant a little bit.
Yeah.
And,
well, so that goes a long way.
And so I hated it.
I got you.
And
there's some Freudian thing in there somewhere that.
Yeah, no, seriously, I think so. And like I can go back to specific times, but like if I win an award, I cringe at it, but I'm like, it's good for my school, because we were not known for data at all, and now they are, right? And that was you have to get those accolades to feel that way. I didn't like that. Now I'm in a situation, you're in a situation where you have no choice but to do self-promotion.
Yeah, I got to sell myself.
Yeah. And, for me, I'm having a hard time with that, still. And, as I sit here, I'm looking at a cartoon of me on a big old thing there, but I did create a website, charlieapigian.com. Go to it, folks. I think it might still be up when this comes out. I got to get used to that.
Yeah.
And that is, that's going to be hard, but.
Well, now you're a product.
I guess so.
Your product was data and let me help you and all this other type of stuff. But now you're like, please give me money for these reasons.
Well,
and that's a big difference. It doesn't feel as altruistic, does it?
Actually does.
To sell yourself like that?
It's you get to a point where you feel like it's time to stop giving everything away.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, and I've given everything away.
Okay, so
everything
you just
so many years.
Yeah, you're just ready to not do that. Okay,
yeah.
That doesn't So I want to be like to your 3 pillars: inspire, educate, and advise.
Yeah.
I've only got one right now. It's do good, and it's too vague, and so I've got to hammer it down. And so one of the things that I wanted to get to in this is I wanted to make a declaration.
Okay.
That I'm going to give 100% to what I do, and I kind of said that earlier, but I mean that. I want to represent myself in a product that I build in a way that I want to and push towards a future that I like. And what that means for me is I want to grow a product or an idea to the point where I employ others again, and then I turn that into, whatever the next step looks like. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've talked about what comes after this and stuff like that. And I'm not ready to talk about that openly just yet, but that's realistically, this is my last thing before that.
Well, let me be very clear on my end. Mm-hmm. I am a faculty member at Belmont University, and the students are fantastic. I don't see that changing.
But you get summers now. That's just for you.
I don't have to, and it because of that, going from 12-month to 10-month, that also comes with a pay cut.
Yeah.
So this idea of making money is so my wife doesn't have to all of a sudden go and get a full-time job and to try to just, still have 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
And 2 of them are in college.
Yeah, 2 of them are at Belmont specifically.
Yes. And my son just got a house, and he's probably going to, they're about ready to do the other stuff.
Yeah, but that's not bad or wrong. You want to make money, and that's fine. And you've got time to make money.
And I'm allowed to. I never
You're
felt
absolutely allowed to.
When you're an admin, it's not, there's definitely more conflict there, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I really, you could do other stuff.
Yeah.
First of all, I will never be full-time somewhere else.
It makes sense.
But there's no, the cuffs are off.
Yeah. If you're not a 12-month contract, the expectation is that you can do other stuff.
Yes.
That's fair.
And actually Belmont wants you to.
To fill that time with productivity?
No, they want you to practice what you preach.
Oh, get out there and that makes sense.
And how else am I going to stay up on AI and data storytelling and all of the stuff I do than to do it? And
I feel like when I was watching you work from the position of executive director, you were doing everything that it was stated, from an external perspective. That you were out there shaking hands, meeting people, talking stuff up, and like you said earlier, everybody knew you, and I knew you, and you and Belmont were no, that's combative, but you were like this.
Yeah, absolutely, and still, the faculty I work with, fantastic.
It enabled you to do what Charlie Apigian needs, and that's to get out there and get stuff done.
That's right. Yeah.
Like you are a community leader, and we've talked about this before. You act as the glue in a lot of those situations. Like, you keep it going, you move the ball. It's the same thing we're talking about with Alex. Like, you don't drop the ball, you keep it moving, and maybe it's not like you're not rushing for a touchdown or anything like that, but you're getting yards every single time.
And I'm not going to stop that. Like, I'm already doing, I think, 1 or 2 projects right now. One is like with playgrounds in Nashville, and another one is looking at another one I can't talk about yet.
Yeah, but that your pro bono plate is full.
That's not, and those will become real projects.
Oh, that's good.
And so, those are not meant to be pro bono.
Okay.
It'll be real work, not the advisory stuff.
But that's where we're getting at, though. You've been doing real work, if not for free, but not for your own personal benefit.
I've been doing real work that should have been paid, except I was doing it through the lens. I was a Belmont person, and it was great marketing.
You were a hired gun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved that because it also got me into rooms that, I wasn't a vendor. I wasn't trying to sell something.
It's a big difference for sure. It's a different conversation. It's like, what's your motivation? Oh, you're not trying to immediately shake me down for money? Well, let's talk some more there.
But,
I get that.
I was leaving the house at 5 in the morning because, again, this is when I lived in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, you were doing the commute. Yeah.
And then I'd get home at 9 at night. And that was 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Or maybe at least 4. And
sounds like a bit
old.
much.
That got old. Mm-hmm. Now I'm seeing my dogs in the morning, and I'm spending more time at home. My wife and I we're together at night, and we've gone like 20 years without like a consistent time together. We haven't been on vacations. I never take vacations.
Yeah, you were telling
That's got to change. My son's going to Germany this summer on a research internship. Mm-hmm. It's like the proudest moment I have for my son, for my one individually for him. My other kids I have other amazing moments with. I want to go. Like, I would never do that if I was the executive director.
Oh yeah, because you couldn't.
I could, but in my head I can't.
Well, that's what I mean. Is you couldn't because the second you walk away, things don't happen for like 2 weeks, and then it falls apart.
Yeah,
not really, but that's the way you treat things.
And exactly, and so and that's not fair to my wife. Mm-mm. The one that literally just went through this with me, and
who proved herself to be ride or die.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
I was envious of that.
Yeah, she's freaking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely. It's one of the reasons, so we've been looking at houses lately. You know why? Because she's cute and adorable when she looks at houses. And so I'm like, let's go for it. It's been very special. And we have been through, like, we raised 4 kids in an area we had no family.
All right.
And so.
How long have we been recording? An hour 17?
Yeah.
All right.
You ready to do a declaration?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give 100% in whatever it is that I do, and I'm going to take you guys along with me.
Who's they?
They is anybody who will listen. I want you to understand the many and ever-present emotions that come with stepping out on your own, striking out on your own, however you want to say it. Tons of people do this all the time. There's nothing new to it, but I feel like if people see it and the effort and struggle that goes into it, then you'll better understand that you can actually do it. Anybody can do this stuff. It's just that once you get started, are you going to stop? And that's what I've got to tell myself is once I take that step, I can't stop. And when I rejected the job offer, that's the first step I took. And I'm just now feeling it in a big way because I'm having to tell people and stuff. But that was me making the choice that is going to lead to what's coming. And so what I want from the community or anybody who's willing to know or to keep up with it is like, how do you want that information? Because we can talk about it here on the podcast and stuff every other week. But I can also record things and put it up on the social medias as well.
Yeah.
As far as like, this is what I did today because I need people to help keep me accountable. And so this isn't me doing this for just the community too, because I always work better. And I mentioned it earlier, when I see people hustling and getting at it. And so if you're somebody out there who's hustling and getting at it, and this is helpful in any kind of way, let's do this together. I need to learn. I need to get better at my social media, internet chops. And also I want to share this stuff, but then at the same time, I want to see what people are up to, because if you're out there doing something cool, it'll help me do something cool. And I'd appreciate that type of two-way transparency. But at the very least, you can just point and say, you're not doing what you said you were going to do, so what gives? And then I'll be like, oh, I wasn't doing what I said I was going to do, so I best.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you have to do this particular industry. You have to be on your own for this or that, but giving that genuine
it's whatever I decide.
Yeah. And, I have always said I just want to do good, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think sticking to that, like that's always going to be, like data for good is always going to be tattooed on my heart. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. I see something great about it. If I was to give a little bit of opinion, I think this podcast, you and I together, is great. Mm-hmm. I think you on your own is genuine and great, and people need to see that as well. Like I think if you were to branch out a little bit and have that public persona.
So you're breaking up with me?
Not at all. No, we're keeping this, right? We don't want this to go away, but every other week, 10 minutes is, I think, not enough, Charlie. Why? I think this podcast is one way for us to do what you've always said is people need to hear that this is important. Mm-hmm. But I also think our megaphones by ourselves is also good. Yeah. And then, when we're ready to create that product, I'm ready to create the back end and the data part.
Yeah, there we go. And so the last thing that I wanted to talk about as far as the future state goes is that we've really been considering whether or not to do sponsorships with the podcast or to do a Patreon with the podcast, and I think we're going to do some of that. Yeah,
and it's what we're doing. If you're doing the video part, it costs money. We have like 4 or 5 subscriptions to things every month. We have a video editor.
We have a cost per episode.
We do. And we have people that have said they would love to sponsor, and we've stayed away from it. We technically are a nonprofit, 501c3, and we did that because we received a grant early from Amazon, and that has been great. But I think you're right. But I also think some of that content can be behind closed doors kind of thing. Well, and we can do so much more if we do that.
Yeah, we did a recording before, just kind of impromptu, or before I had the conversation with my coworkers. And so that seems like something we put behind like Patreon, because it's not an episode, but it's just content that's like, if you want visibility into like how like to address nerves before you do something like, nerve wracking, better way to put it, but like that's a good thing. It's a good thing to watch, but if you just want to be entertained by somebody stressing the hell out, it's also entertaining from that perspective.
And I think we can get real imaginative there. Like there's going to be times like that was a real raw moment that I think could actually help people. I
don't disagree with that.
And I think it's about message. It's about doing things, but we also, the only way for it to be sustainable is to be a little bit imaginative on our end, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I like that. All right, Charlie, we hit almost an hour and a half.
Yeah, I was worried.
I'm going to cut half of this.
I was worried. Yeah, we're going to have to give it a really close listen. But I was worried that we'd get 40 minutes into it and not have anything else to say. But, like we normally are, we have plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
No, so this is where you stop. You got to stop here.
I don't want to.
But you got to, because I've got to pee really bad.
Oh,
like super bad. Like my eyeballs are floating. And so we said we were winding up. If you got something to say, you can say it quick.
You know what? I don't even want to do the whole thing. So
no, you just gotta say bye. Like we did the intro and the outro. Do you have something else for real that you legitimately want to say? Because
I think it can easily be on another episode.
Well, write it down.
I know what it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So Charlie, I say we sign off.
Yeah, I do too. It doesn't feel like a lot now, but when we're editing it to send out, it's going to be, it's going to feel a lot different. And so I don't know if you hear this and you have any feedback, let us know. We're not going to do this exact thing every time, but there's going to be a lot more interpersonal conversation that goes into the podcasts, and less straightforward interviews and more like, let's have a conversation about this piece.
I think that's a great way to end.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.